Windows features. So in this lecture, we're going to talk about the different features in each of the versions of Windows. Specifically, we're going to be talking about XP, Windows Vista, and Windows 7. The newer Windows out there, Windows 8 and Windows 10, most of them have features that go back into Windows 7 as well as a couple of new features. But we'll be focusing on XP, Vista, and 7. So Windows XP, it is an old operating system. It came out in 2001. And I often get asked from students, it's 2016, why are we still talking about XP? Because people are still using it. It's a great system, works really well, and it still runs pretty much everything that we have out there. In fact, it was so well liked by business users that Microsoft later went back and created the 64-bit professional version so that they could use it with more than 4 gigabytes of RAM. And if you have that version, it will still run everything on the market today. It is awesome. The problem with it is no longer supported by Microsoft, okay? It did come originally in 3 versions, the Home, the Professional, and the Media Center version. The Home was for your home users, Professional was for your business users. It allowed you to do domain controller networking, which is what we use in large enterprises. It did file and folder permissions and remote management. So some of those nice professional features, and you'll still see this out there in a lot of businesses. Media Center Edition, also known as the MCE Edition, was optimized for TV viewing and recording. So some of the early home theater PCs were running Media Center Edition. They had TV tuners built in, and they had recording capabilities to do recording and playback and be able to be run by a remote. And then again, that 64-bit, that allowed them to use those x64 processors that started coming out in the mid-2000s and allowed them to go over the 4 gigabyte of memory limit. Because remember, if you're using a 32-bit operating system, you can't use more than 3.25 gigabytes of RAM in Windows, or 4 gigabytes physically. Okay. Windows Vista. Windows Vista was introduced to replace Windows XP. Unfortunately, it had such higher requirements as we saw last time. We went from having 233 megahertz to needing 800 megahertz of CPU. We went from needing 64 megabytes of RAM to up to 512 megabytes of RAM. We went from needing 1.5 gigabytes of storage drive, hard drive space to needing 16 gigabytes of storage space. And so because these requirements were so heavy, a lot of users didn't upgrade. And those who did found it to be glitchy and problematic, and Vista just did not have a very good reputation on the street. It came out in 5 different flavors. It came out in the Home Basic and Home Premium, the Business, the Ultimate, and the Enterprise. So whereas this, with XP, we pretty much had 2 major editions, the Home and the Professional, for the business and the home user. Here we had all these different variations. And so Home Basic was the stripped down version. It gave you the basic Windows Vista environment. It gave you a movie maker and a photo gallery, some parental controls. When you went into Premium, you got prettier effects, like the glass effects and the arrow. It gave you Media Center. It gave you DVD capabilities. The HD version of Movie Maker, and you could schedule your file backups. When you got into business, it added all those corporate features like domain networking, file and folder permissions, remote features, and centralized management, scanning and faxing, offline files, and shadow copy. We'll talk about a lot of those later on as well. But it did take away all of those home things like parental controls and Media Center and movie making and DVDs. And the games were hidden as well, because you should be playing games at work, right? When you went to Ultimate, you got everything of Home Premium and everything of Business slapped together. And it also gave them this thing called BitLocker, which was full disk file encryption for your system drive. And it works really, really well. It uses AES 128-bit encryption. We'll talk more about BitLocker in a little bit, but it is a very, very awesome capability that was introduced in Vista, as well as being able to run some Unix-based stuff and downloading some extras. And then Enterprise was like Business Edition, except it also added in that Unix capability, because a lot of enterprises had Unix servers and they wanted to be able to run those programs on them, as well as BitLocker, because again, that encryption was really a great thing. So as you look at this, kind of think of, when you think of home, you want to think of things like making DVDs, playing games, media centers, that kind of stuff. When you go to business, it's all about work, faxing and scanning, and backing up files and centralized management. Ultimate, you got all of that stuff thrown together, right? The only ones that had BitLocker, though, was Ultimate and Enterprise. And each of those had a different price point. As you went down the scale, it cost more money for that license. We got into Windows 7. They started trying to make things a little simpler. And basically, you have the Home Premium is the home version from Vista, right? Professional is, again, the business environment, going back to those old Windows XP days, because a lot of the business customers really shunned Vista so much that they didn't even want the word business in there because that reminded them of Vista. So they went back to the professional naming of XP. And then we still had Ultimate Enterprise. Windows 7 Starter. This was usually used for netbooks. It's a 32-bit operating system only, so it has a maximum amount of memory that it can access up to 4 gigabytes. It was a stripped-down version, very basic. It did have the gadgets and the Windows media player and some stuff like that. But it was fairly stripped down. It's a very basic operating system. Home Premium gave us this new thing called a home group, which is kind of like work groups in XP, where in a small office, home office environment, we can connect together and share our printers and our files and stuff like that. It also gave us the ability to do internet TV, some media center stuff, multi-monitor support so we can have dual screens or extended screens. Arrow, which we'll talk about, which is a prettier graphical interface, had the mobility center so you can connect to your cell phone and things like that. And it came in 32 and 64-bit varieties. And you'll see that as we go down the list here, they're all going to be 32 and 64-bit varieties, with the exception of Starter, which was only 32-bit. Windows 7 Professional was the one for most businesses. It was domain networking, file and folder permissions, centralized management, remote features, backups, group policies, offline files, a lot of the same stuff we were talking about with Business and Vista, right? Carried over again. And the other thing it had is this thing called Windows XP mode, which I'll show you a picture of later. But essentially, it bundled a virtualized version of Windows XP inside of Windows 7 by default as well. And the reason why they did this was a lot of businesses still had programs that only ran on Windows XP. And they were afraid that if they upgraded to 7, or when they did upgrade to Vista, they found that a lot of their programs stopped working. And so when they came to Windows 7, they said, hey, you know what? We'll make sure all your programs work. Please upgrade to 7. It'll work for you. And they gave this as a foolproof way of upgrading their stuff as well. So you'll see that in Professional on version 7. With Ultimate, you got all the stuff of Professional. Plus, you got your BitLocker added on. Again, just like Vista, Ultimate Enterprise had BitLocker. And that BitLocker also had the new thing called BitLocker to Go, where you could actually encrypt your thumb drives as well to make sure that people can't get your data if you lost them. And that again was 32-bit and 64-bit. And then Enterprise has all the Ultimate stuff, but it was only sold through what's called volume licensing. So if you wanted to get Enterprise, that'd be something like our college. If we were going to buy 2,000 licenses for all of our computers, we would buy Enterprise and get a license in that way. Okay. So here's a list of features. We're going to go through each of these individually. This is kind of my table of contents slide. Windows Desktop. We'll talk about Arrow, Sidebar, and Gadgets. We'll talk about User Account Control, BitLocker, Full Disk Encryption. We'll also talk about Shadow Copy, System Restore, Ready Boost, Security Center, Compatibility Mode, and the Windows XP Virtualization Mode that we talked about before. Alright. So, the desktop. When you go back to old XP, this is what it looks like when you boot up the computer originally. A beautiful desktop. You can see you have the My Documents, My Computer, and Recycle Bin on the desktop. My Computer has access to all your drives, your CD drives, as well as your external USB drives and your hard drive. My Documents is actually a folder on your hard drive that stores your documents, your photos, your pictures, that kind of stuff. The Recycle Bin is where you throw away stuff. So when you want to delete something, you put it in the Recycle Bin, but it doesn't actually delete until you right-click and empty that Recycle Bin by erasing the contents. The Start menu on the bottom left corner is where you access all the programs from. You have a quick shortcut area with the Internet Explorer and the Show the Desktop icon next to the Start menu. And going all the way to the right side, you have your taskbar notification area, in this case with the clock, and then we have our ejecting disk icon and our virus scan and security backup icons. In Vista and 7, the desktop got a little bit prettier. We removed the actual word Start from the icon and we just have the Windows symbol, sometimes called the Windows Pearl, on the bottom left corner. When you click on that, you'll actually get all of your list of applications that you want to use. As you can see, on the left is Vista, on the right is Windows 7. Okay. In Windows Vista, we started out with the gadget sidebar. Notice we have like a clock up there, we have a performance monitor, we have a calendar, and a little puzzle game. And they're all stuck to the right-hand side of the screen in what's called the sidebar area. With Windows 7, we actually moved that out and we took away the sidebar, but we kept the gadgets, and you can put them anywhere you want. So if you see over here, I have a clock and I have this sticky pad type thing showing up on Windows 7 that I can put anywhere I want on that screen. Arrow was introduced in Vista and 7 as well. What Arrow does is it actually allows you to have translucent windows in Windows animations, and also three-dimensional viewing of different windows. So if you look back a couple of slides here, this three-dimensional viewing of the windows as I slide through the different things by using Alt-Tab and switching windows, that actually is part of the Arrow feature set, which requires more graphical capability. Also, this translucence, if you see the Start menu, I can kind of see through the right-hand side of the Start menu to the pictures underneath, right? It's kind of a layered effect. That takes a little bit more graphical capability. Again, that's part of Arrow. In Windows XP, we didn't have that ability at all. It was either on top or on bottom. There was no translucentness to it. So that's called Arrow. The next thing we have is our user account control. And what user account control does is it's going to have Windows request permission before it makes changes that requires admin level permissions. So back in Windows XP, what we would end up doing was we would create a user account and an administrator account. And so if you were running things that needed elevated privileges, you'd log in as the administrator to do those functions. Or you'd right-click on the file and say, run as administrator. As a way, a lot of people didn't do that. They just got lazy and they made all account administrator accounts, which is a huge security vulnerability. So what Windows did in Vista and above is they added user account control, where every account, whether it's an admin or a standard user, has the ability to run things as an admin, but it will ask you first, basically, are you sure you want to do this? Like this on the left side, do you want to allow the following program to make this change? So if you're an admin, you just hit yes and it would do it. If you're not an admin, it'll bring up a secondary box, like on the right, that will ask for the admin's password. Okay? So this is to protect you from doing stupid things to your computer and allowing hackers in or installing malware or something like that. So to give you a little more security, it's called user account control. Essentially, it just says, are you sure you want to do this? And gives you a second chance to say yes or no. BitLocker. BitLocker is one of the great things that Windows added. BitLocker is a full disk encryption system that's included with Vista and 7 in the Ultimate or the Enterprise versions. It's designed to provide data protection by encrypting the volume, the entire disk partition for you, or your removable media if you're using BitLocker to go. So essentially what you'll end up seeing is if you right-click on the drive, as you see here on the E drive, you can go down to turn on BitLocker. It will ask you for a password, and it will encrypt the drive using that password. This uses AES encryption, very high-level encryption, works extremely well. The same type of stuff that's used to protect top secret data in the U.S. government. Okay, same algorithms. So it's a very good implementation. It does do full disk drive encryption for you. You could turn this on any one drive or all drives. It's up to you. And it'll do a really good job for you. So it's a great feature. But again, it's only included with the Enterprise and the Ultimate editions. So it's one of those things that drives people into buying one of those higher editions, and then they can get BitLocker because it does do a great job. If you're using a Macintosh computer, we use the same type of technology. It's called FileVault. FileVault 2 works the same way as BitLocker. Shadow copy. So shadow copy is one of my favorite things. Because as a support IT technician, this thing will save your life more than once. So what it does is it's constantly saving previous versions of files on Windows as you're doing things. So if you think of when you do backups, they back up to an external drive someplace. Shadow copy instead is actually keeping extra copies of things on your hard drive. So if I go into, say, my data folder, and I right-click it and go to Properties, I can click on the Previous Version tab, and on there you'll see all the previous versions of the file. In this case, it's kept versions every couple of minutes in this particular picture. Generally, it's set up so that every 30 minutes or every hour, it will save a copy of it. And after 2 days, it'll just delete it off. So it's kind of, normally you do a backup, you do it every 24 hours or do a daily backup. Well, this is actually doing those instantaneous in-between backups. And the nice thing is, if you ever get a call from a customer who goes, hey, I was just working on my, final term paper for this class, and I deleted it by accident 3 minutes ago. Can you help me? Well, sure, I can go to previous version, and I can go back maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes and restore that same file that they just deleted. Okay, so it can really save your butt. It's available in Business, Professional, Ultimate, and Enterprise editions. This is a business class feature. Okay, really, really helpful. You'll see it a lot in the business world. I've seen this a lot where people will delete something accidentally, and if they call us pretty quickly, we can pull it from here and have them back up and running in seconds. If I have to pull it from a backup tape or from a backup hard drive, that can take us a lot longer to get to that file. So shadow copy is really helpful. System restore. System restore allows us to restore our system back to a given date and time based on a restore point created. So when you go and install a critical update or a new piece of software, you usually want to create a restore point, which can be manually created or automatically created by Windows before you do a major system change. So let's say I was going to go install Windows 7 Service Pack 1, right? I go to install Service Pack 1. The first thing it's going to do is create a restore point. Let's say it gets halfway through that installation and it crashes and something bad happens. I can then go back and restore myself to the time before I had that update done. Okay? It rolls back all those changes back to that given date or time. Okay? This is really important. We'll talk about more when we get to security and viruses. If you have a virus and you detect it, you want to make sure you turn off system restore, clean the virus, and then put system restore back on with a new date and time saying after virus cleanup. Because otherwise, let's say I had a virus on the 23rd at 3 p.m., right? And I go and restore myself to 3:38 p.m. Where did I just restore? The virus, right? So you're going to want to go in and delete all those old restore points that may contain the virus, right? So you got to keep that in mind. But otherwise, restore points are really a great thing because they will bring back, it's not just used for data, but it's also your system settings and configurations. Ready Boost. Ready Boost is a feature they introduced in Vista to help increase your hard disk read performance by using USB as a cache. So we talked about with our hard disks, we had those 5400 RPM hard disks that are slow, and then we have 7200, which is a little bit faster. We have 10,000 and 15,000, which are much faster, or we can go really fast by going SSD, solid state drive. Well, if you can't afford a solid state drive, this kind of acts like a hybrid, where you plug in a USB thumbstick into like a 3.0 port, and you can actually have it use it so that it goes from the hard drive to the thumbstick to the memory, and that should speed up your operations. In reality, I haven't found a real great use for this in my life. I just find that if you feel like you need to use this, you're better off just putting more memory in the computer. That's my personal thing. Memory is fairly cheap. Using this as a hybrid it's not that great. But it is a feature that is offered in Vista and above on all versions of it. Security Center. So Security Center is a feature in XP, 7, and Vista that checks the system by regularly monitoring the status of key areas like your firewall, your antivirus, and your automatic backup. Here's a picture from Windows Vista. Just to give you an example, we got the firewall, our updates, our malware protection for antivirus, and our other security settings. This can include things like Windows Defender and Windows Firewall. As you can see here, in the upper left, we have Windows Defender and Windows Firewall. In Windows 7, the Microsoft Security Essentials was provided, getting users a free embedded antivirus and anti-malware solution for use with Windows. In Windows 8, they combine this all into what they call Windows Defender. It gives you malware protection, antivirus protection, spear phishing web phishing protection, and some other nice things to use. And so they're just trying to get people, because a lot of people would not go out and pay for extra antivirus software, so they're putting it into the operating system to give them more protection, because Windows has gotten this horrible reputation of being so insecure and plagued by malware, and so they're trying to do something about it, and that's the idea behind Security Center. The other thing that'll be in here is your backups. If you haven't backed up in, say, a week, it'll flash the little red X icon in your taskbar saying you need to perform your backups. That's run by the Security Center. Compatibility mode. So, when you have older games or programs, they might not run properly in newer operating systems like XP or Vista or 7. For instance, maybe you grew up playing a game like Lemmings back in the late 90s, right? It's a really fun game we used to play on our old Windows 95 machines. If you try running that on Windows XP, it doesn't always work so well. So what you have to do is actually go in, install the program, and then right-click on it, go to Properties, and under the Compatibility tab, you'll do the drop-down where it says Run this program as, and then you click on what one you want to run as. And you might tell it, hey, go back and run it like you're running Windows 95. And so it emulates being a Windows 95 machine for that one program only. Okay? This works really well by tricking your system into thinking it's an older machine and allowing it to run. This is very common if you're dealing with a business like a real estate agent or a law office. They tend to use a lot of programs that maybe haven't been updated in a while. And so if you're dealing with a law office, they're not in the computer business. They're not always buying the latest and greatest all the time. At least in my experience, when I dealt with law offices, I ended up having to use a lot of custom software that somebody had built just for lawyers, and they don't update those nearly as often as as other softwares, right? And so you might have to use this to get those things to run. The other thing that they introduced into Windows 7 was called the Windows XP mode. And Windows XP mode comes in Professional, Ultimate, or Enterprise. And essentially, this is a virtualized environment. So it comes inside of your Windows 7 machine, which you can see the full desktop there with the flying turtle. And then in a window, you could open up a Windows XP box that was in a sandbox environment. In that environment, you could then operate your programs using what's called XP mode, and it runs it as if you're running an XP machine. The reason why they introduced this was to get business customers who were stuck in XP to actually upgrade to 7. Because so many customers were like, hey, I'm happy with my XP. It works great. I'm afraid of Vista. I'm not going anywhere. I saw what you did with Vista. I'm not going to Windows 7, right? And so they introduced this mode, so it gave you full compatibility and backwards compatibility into XP. It works really well. Do you have to use Windows XP mode to get this type of capability? No. You can install this yourself if you get VirtualBox or VMware or something like that, but then you're going to have to install Windows XP yourself inside that virtual environment. Here, it's already bundled, it's already done. All you gotta do is click a button and it's there, right? So it's very nice and it gives you maximum capability. If you have Professional, Ultimate, or Enterprise, you could just turn this feature on and it works really good for you. Power options. No. So the question was, if you're using compatibility mode, is it using XP mode? No. So the difference is that using XP mode. Shoot it out of it. Yeah, so there's a difference between compatibility mode and XP mode. So with compatibility mode, you're emulating or pretending to be XP. In XP mode, you are XP. So it's a slight. It sounds like they're the same, but they're not. When you're dealing with XP mode, it is a fully functioning XP machine, as if you had a XP computer sitting on your desk as well. With compatibility mode, it just basically tells the software, hey, I'm running XP, I swear, right? Even though you're not. So it tries to trick it. Some programs won't be tricked by that, and you have to go into full XP mode for those. Yeah. XP mode is a full functioning, full-on Windows XP operating system. With compatibility mode, it's just a trick to make it think it's using XP, but it's not. Yeah. So you could try compatibility mode first, and if that doesn't work, then go to XP mode. It's usually what I try to do. Power options in XP. So in XP, we had a lot of different power options. You don't need to memorize this table, okay? But essentially, if you had a desktop or a laptop computer, you can go into your power schemes and set when do you want to turn off the monitor, when do you want to turn off the hard disks, and when do you want to shut down the computer or stand by the computer. And so if I'm on a desktop computer, I might after 5 minutes turn off the monitor just to save on my electric bills, right? If I haven't used a computer in 15 minutes, I'll have it turn off the hard disk so it's not spinning that disk, burning up power, right? This is all more about saving energy and saving the planet than saving battery life, because there's no battery on the desktop. But instead, if you go to a laptop mode, you're going to want those to be a lot shorter, and maybe it's only going to be 3 minutes on the display, because on a laptop, the number one thing that drains your battery is your display. That is the biggest energy drain of a laptop. So I usually have mine set that after about 2 minutes, the display turns off. After about 5 minutes, the hard drive turns off, right? After 10 minutes, I'll have the whole system go into sleep mode. Stuff like that. And again, in here, you're going to do that through the power options. It gives you a very quick and easy way to set those 4 options real quick. If you go into advanced, there's actually even more settings where you can do it, like the CPU, if you're on battery, or on AC, on wall power. If you go into Vista and 7, it looks a little bit different. They have this prettier format to it, and it's a lot simpler. It's either the balanced or the power saver mode. You can click on those. There's also one for advanced mode or a high performance mode. Balanced is the default. Power saver is going to reduce your CPU performance and screen brightness to give you the longer battery life. That's really good for laptops. If you're using high performance, you don't care about that. You're okay with burning through the battery because you want the fastest performance, the brightest screen, and the shortest battery life, right? If you click on over here, the change plan settings, it'll bring up this window at the bottom where you can actually go into depth just like we did in XP and say how long in minutes do we want to set those things to and configure them yourself. And the last thing we're going to talk about here is what's called end-of-life considerations. So I kind of mentioned this earlier with the XP, right? XP, if you go to Microsoft's website, it'll actually tell you all of the versions of Windows they have. that are currently out there. What is the latest update or service pack? So in our case, XP went to Service Pack 3 because it stayed out so long. Vista only went to Service Pack 2, 7 only went to Service Pack 1, and then they changed it. 8, they didn't have a Service Pack, instead they upgraded to 8.1 as the replacement. And then 10 just came out in July. It does not have a Service Pack yet. If you look here, the end of mainstream support. So mainstream support means you as a customer buy Windows at the store. How long is Microsoft going to continue to put out updates and patches for you? Okay. They stopped supporting it for most people back in 2009 for XP. It's now 2016. There's still companies out there using XP. Okay. Windows Vista, their end of mainstream support was 2012. So again, you probably shouldn't be using Vista if you have that at home anymore. You should upgrade. Windows 7. It was supposed to be over by 2015 is when Microsoft wanted ready to push up to Windows 8. Windows 8 is supposed to end in 2 years in 2018. And then right now Windows 10 is supposed to go out to 2020. So another 4 years. If you look at the extended support, that's as long as Microsoft's going to support it at all, right? So Microsoft said with so many customers who really liked XP that they ended up extending their support out to 2014. At this point, if you're still using XP and you want Microsoft to support it, you pay them millions and millions of dollars a year for a contract to do such. I know several government agencies who still have XP that haven't moved off yet, and they are paying millions of dollars a year to keep XP running in their organizations until they can get into Windows 7 or Windows 8 and move over. So it does happen. So it's one of those things that if you're looking to buy new licensing for your organization, right, you gotta look at it and go, hey, I really like XP. Well, maybe you shouldn't use XP because it's expired, right? And what I being expired means that if there's any new bugs or vulnerabilities that are found, guess what? Microsoft's not patching them. So you're going to have those vulnerabilities out there forever. Same thing with Vista. We're already kind of past that, right? Past 2012. Same thing with 7. 7, they're still putting out releases up until 2020, right? So that's the idea, is that they're not really focusing their efforts in these old operating systems. They're focusing on the future into Windows 10 and beyond. And so you got to look at that. So as you're building out new systems, you're going to be looking at those newer operating systems, 7, 8, and 10. XP and Vista are pretty much end of life. They're on the way out. Don't worry too much about them. I don't think anybody's going to shed a tear about Vista though, so it'll be all right. A lot of people shed a tear about XP though. All right, a simple question for you guys. Which version uses the Aero desktop? Is that XP, Vista, 7, XP and Vista, or Vista and 7? Vista and 7, right? It was introduced in Vista and followed up again in Windows 7.